Good morning, I'm Stuff's Chief Political Reporter, Henry Cook, and I'm joined this morning by the Leader of the Opposition, Judith Collins. Judith, good morning.
Good morning, Henry.
The government are launching their vaccine passes this morning. How long do you think those should be in use for? How long should that be a thing you have to carry around in your phone?
Well, you're going to have it for any overseas travel, so let's be frank. Overseas, if you're going to go overseas, that's going to be required. But I think in New Zealand, if you get to a really good double vaccination rate across the country, we said 85-90%, the government said 90%. Well, it's going to be something where they need to relook at it, whether or not that's going to be necessary for people to have to carry with them everywhere, because we are going to get to a situation where people realise, I think, that COVID is out in the community, and we need to do everything we can to prevent its spread, but it will spread, unfortunately.
So you think at around 85% we should just stop using these vaccine passes?
Well, no, it's going to be necessary for a while, and certainly for certain occupations. Like we're very, we support the mandates around things like in the healthcare sector, the border-facing workers, people like that, occupations like that. But it'd be really great, if we get to 90%, because we say 85, 90, get to 90% double vaccination rate right across the country, 80% in every DHB. If we get that, we shouldn't have to go down a mandated path, and we shouldn't have to be able to use vaccine passports other than for overseas travel.
So that sounds like you'd only use these passes for a few months, really, because we're not that far from 85% double vaccinated across the country. Well,
let's see. I think we'll see how it goes and what other variations of COVID are coming into the country. So it's always good to have the technology, to have it there, and to have people trust it. I understand the website's already crashed this morning from the government. I think there'll be a lot of people on the phone trying to get through a helpline to be able to get their vaccine certificates. But it is important, I think, that we have this mechanism in place.
Would you require, if you owned a bar right now, you're in Auckland, you're keen to open fully, would you require vaccine passes?
Well, I think you'd have to look at the rules. My view is that every business needs to be able to make their own decisions about this. And if I was running a bar at the moment, it depends on the circumstances. Is it crowded? Is it going to be a small place? Is it going to be outdoors? I'd make those decisions based on the health and safety criteria.
So you would definitely do it. You would have to kind of have a think about it before you cut off some
Well,
customers.
It depends on what the rules are at the moment. So I think at the moment the government is saying people will have to have one to go into bars, in which case I'd always comply with those.
Well, not have to, but if you want to have basically normal rules rather than kind of like,
Look, I put it this way, I'm not going to require people who come and visit my husband and me in our home to have a vaccine passport. So I'm not going to be doing that. I think it is really important that we retain some sense of including people in our lives.
Is there a bit of a risk of overreach right now with this?
Well, I hope there's not. There's always risk with these things, but I hope that the government doesn't overdo it. If they overreach, you can end up with people pushing back and some bad outcomes.
What kind of bad outcomes?
You can end up with people simply saying, we've had enough of this. We can see it around the border of Auckland, people saying, certain reports we hear, which we're still waiting to verify, about people being stopped to ask for their passes to be able to leave Auckland with a whole load of mongrel mob just wandering through or driving through. That's what people are seeing. That's what they're saying. This is the sort of thing that doesn't help compliance. On the Auckland border, we're going to get a bit more detail about that later today. Yeah. In your mind, December 24, you're trying to drive out of Auckland. It seems pretty unreasonable that anyone would have to get a test. That would just overload the labs. So no one really is talking about that, although who knows. Vaccines, though, do you think it would be reasonable for there to be spot checks on people to see if they're vaccinated or not, or should that not matter? Yeah, I thought about that idea, and I actually just don't think it's going to be workable. What are you going to do? You've got a carload of people, one's not vaccinated or doesn't have their passport vaccine certificate downloaded. What are you going to do? Leave them on the side of the road?
Find them.
Are you going to pop them in the, what if someone's in a boot? I mean, there's all these sorts of things. I just think we need to be realistic here. You've got 30
we do
to
spot
40.
checks for driver's licensing, for drug driving. Is it the same thing?
Yeah, not when you've got 30 to 40,000 cars in lines trying to leave the city. Aucklanders have been through a very tough time. And I think the rest of the country is very aware of that. And I think more so now than they were. It's just a tough time. The government needs to get the vaccination rates up. That's it. So
bottom line, you should be able to leave if you're vaccinated or not from Auckland.
If you have the vaccination rates that we say around the country as well as in Auckland. It's not just Auckland, it's the rest of the country. You need to get those vaccination rates up, and we need to be able to let people have their summer. There's a quality of life issue here, and people want to have their lives back.
There's been a spate of polls in the last week or so that show Labour down a bit, National up a bit, but not very good news for you personally. Do you think that actually matters?
It doesn't really matter, but what does matter is that we are trending in the right direction. It's the party vote that matters. If we have to say this, a million times, we'll say it a million times. But that is what matters. And opposition's a tough job, and unfortunately sometimes always have to ask the tough questions, but we also have to propose. And what people are starting to see is a change in terms of us being able to put out policy. We're putting policy out 2 years before an election. I mean, that's almost unheard of. So you're going to see things change.
There's a lot of reporting about people in your caucus who are a bit wobbly on you as leader right now. What's the message to them? What are you saying to them? What's the path to the 30s? The
path to getting further up in terms of the polling is for everyone to be focused on things that matter to New Zealanders. And there's never any opposition goes through people, thinking various things, other people commentating. But we've been under sustained attack as a party for well over a year. Particularly from Labour, from people who don't want the National Party to do well. We've just got to always keep focused on the things that matter. So that's why we put out the business plan, the COVID plan, the education plan, and I'll be announcing another set of issues next week that we're going to be talking about. So we're just keeping focused on the things that matter.
What do you mean by sustained attack?
Well, I think Henry.
Is that just politics?
I think Henry there's actually been quite a lot of very, very nasty attacks. But look, we just have to keep focused. And this happens to every opposition. Every opposition, particularly when there has been a majority government elected, is always going to have a difficult time until everybody's absolutely wanting to listen to the policies that we're putting out. And we're starting to get some traction there.
Do you think Labour are under sustained attack in 2013, 2014, 2015?
Pretty much, yeah.
Right. So it's just politics, right?
It's politics. It's a tough job. And that's why it needs experience and it needs resilience and it actually needs people who can actually have the fortitude to keep going.
So what are you saying to your caucus members who might be a bit wobbly?
I think everybody's... Look, I'm not seeing that any wobbly behaviour. What I'm seeing is people working really hard. And everyone's very, very focused.
One of the things that's obvious in those polls is that a lot of people on your side of the fence, kind of right-wing voters, would prefer David Seymour to you. What do you put that down to?
Well, I'm not sure that the national people think that at all, but I do think that it is really important that when you're the major opposition party, and I'm the one who has to consistently and every day point out the failures of the government, it is always going to be, a bit difficult in terms of people saying, it's a tough job, and so people are always seeing me having to do that. But at the same time, we're promoting it, and David's doing his job the best he can in terms of a smaller party and focused on just a few issues. But he also is the only person you pretty much hear from in an act. I let all of our team promote their own work, and I believe that is part of what I have to do. I'm the leader of a major party, and we need to become the government, lead the government at the next election. So I've got to have all of our people working hard and actually being able to contribute publicly as well as privately.
How is the relationship between you two? Do you think it's as strong as the relationship between, say, Jacinda Ardern and James Shaw?
Oh, well, absolutely. I think that one of the things is people forget that ACT and National are not the same party. And David and I get on very well. We have a good working relationship. And at the same time, I've had years of being a minister in a government. He hasn't been there yet, but I'm absolutely certain that after the next election, we will be able to form a government together. And that is a really important thing for National and ACT. But if we also look at National and ACT together, even in those latest polls, and bear in mind 2 years out from election, there's only an 8-point difference really between us together and Labour and the Greens together. I mean, that's like 5% of the vote, basically, or 5 points coming across our way, and then suddenly it's all on, isn't it?
Do you trust them?
Yes, I do, actually. I've always found him to be a good person to work with, and I know that he feels the same. He's said it many times.
So you can make him acting PM if you're out of the country, no problem.
Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves a wee bit, isn't it? So maybe we're just we're a little bit ahead of ourselves. But I've never had any reason not to trust David and take him at his word.
Just finally, on I guess the National Act going forwards, is there any other party either in Parliament or kind of with the spectre of getting into Parliament who you could see yourself working with again, or is it kind of a National Act?
I have found over the years that I can pretty much work with anybody, and people would never have seen the Maori Party, for instance, going with National Act as it did in 2008. But actually, it was a very good government, and we can work with anybody. I just think you just got to put the personalities, the differences in policies to one side, and look for the things that you can agree on, and to show mutual respect. I've always taken the view in politics, possibly one of the reasons I'm still here in politics, is that you don't have to agree with people to show them respect.
Judith Collins, thank you.
Thank you.